Hello, hello. So I have Ramli John today with us, the Managing Director of Product Led. Ramli, so excited to finally have you here. And Ramli will be speaking at Product Drive on the 4th and 5th of October. Ramli, if you could tell us a few words about yourself, like how you got into onboarding in general and how you ended up working with Wes and, well, becoming Managing Director of Product Led, essentially.
Yeah, how I got into onboarding. I started my career actually in marketing, and there was a point where I was
Yeah.
driving a ton of signups, a lot of signups for this. Back then, it wasn't called product, so it was just something with a free trial. You're getting a ton of signups for it, and it seems like the the team, the leadership team, was very happy. And I asked if I can take a look at the data in the back end, if people are actually sticking around. And I noticed like, hey, yeah, I'm getting a ton of signups, but none of them are really like sticking around long term, like 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And really
Mm.
that got me digging into product led growth and onboarding. And really like, if even if you're driving massive signups and they're not sticking around, then that's a lot of resources wasted. And that's really how I got into like digging more and researching and eventually writing a book called Product Led Onboarding about this. And that got me connected with Wes. We
Mm.
both a little bit of trivia. We both went to the same school, actually,
Oh,
same
wow.
university,
Cool.
different years, and that's how we knew each other. Not because we were classmates, but because we were both alumni from the same school, and he was running with product led growth, and eventually he asked me to take over their training and education program that they
Mm.
have going there.
You're both from Canada, right?
Yep, we're both from Canada, around the Greater Toronto area, like an
All
hour
right.
from each other.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes incredible how small the world is. Like, we were
Yeah.
recently interviewing for a content marketing internship, and one of the internship candidates goes like, "Oh, and I think like one of your teammates, Tiana, he was from Canada as well, right? Was giving a seminar at like the company I used to work for." I'm like, "Wow, this is crazy, right?"
For
Yeah.
sure. Small world.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, I actually read your book recently.
Thank you.
So I was listening to it on Audible. And yeah, I kind of the first thoughts like I recently saw a post on LinkedIn that kind of made my blood boil because like as a marketing manager at a company that well basically builds products for onboarding for product teams, product marketers, like it kind of really rubbed me up the wrong way, and it said something like this: well, we removed our onboarding and the results didn't
Wow.
change.
Mm.
And then one of my teammates came back to me and said like they saw something similar. So there seems to be this, contrarian trend to say, well, onboarding doesn't work, right? Product growth doesn't work. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean it really depends, and when I say it depends, like we first have to define what onboarding is. I
Hmm.
mean, no matter no, I don't know what they say when they remove onboarding, whether that's they call it
Yeah.
the product tour or the checklist. That is not like imagine it's like meeting somebody for the first time. Like no matter what journey you are in a relationship, whether that a friendship or even a job, you're gonna have to have this job interview. You're gonna have to have that first date, and where that happens and how that happens, it needs to happen. And you can call you want to use tours or checklists. There's this middle ground where the user meets your product for the first time in a job interview. In the jobs, if we're using the jobs to be done
Hmm.
framework, is the first time that they're interviewing your product for a job interview, for a jobs to be done interview. And it no matter how intentional or unintentional you are about it, onboarding is there. Like it is that critical. It's part of the customer journey. And the question now is like whether the what kind of tools or tactics or strategies do you have in place, and for certain, I mean, once again, I don't have the context for that description of what they call as removing
Hmm.
onboarding. You can't remove onboarding. It needs, it's there. It's part of the customer journey. The question is, did they remove the product tour? And then the question I have is, who are your users? Like there are some users who are some people who hate product tours. Like I can imagine, for example, a big example is developers. Now, if you're targeting developers and you're giving them a product tour, chances are they hate it. they
Yeah,
love
oh
just
God.
digging into stuff, looking at API, reading through documents. I know because I used to be a developer back then, and if somebody's trying to do a product tour for me, I'm like, hell no, I'm just gonna try to dig in, figure things out.
Next,
So
next,
I
next.
mean, it really depends.
Close.
It really depends on the user. So to respond to that, first, yeah, I would say onboarding is part of customer journey. I don't know how you can remove it. And second is it really depends on your user, how effective it is, what kind of tools or tactics you use.
Yeah, and I thought also, what you mentioned about product tours, this is typically what is associated with onboarding. And
Mm,
like that's the first thing I hear from our customers. Oh, can we build product tours, right? I'm like, nah, maybe not. Like just don't do it. So I wonder, because like removing onboarding, as you said, it's basically part of the user journey. How can you remove it? But
mm,
also, like, what do you mean by results? That the results didn't
right.
change? Do you
Good
mean,
point.
your trail to paid conversion rate? Then, of
Mm,
course, if you slapped, a 10-step boring product tour that is not leading to any activation points, then of course your results won't change, right? Because it was immaterial if you had it. Maybe they can even improve without that kind of onboarding because you're not annoying people as much.
it's true.
And they can just get to business. But I wonder, like, um, having clearly defined goals for every step, like how important that is, in onboarding, right? This is critical. So by results, you mean how
Mm.
many users have activated, how many users have reached like the first or second activation point, like all these questions. So in your talk, you're going to talk about a 6-step framework actually for developing good onboarding. How did you come up with this framework?
Yeah, the framework is something that Wes Bush and I noticed that we keep applying. It's a process to apply to improve folks' onboarding
Mm,
experience. We worked with companies like Mixmantle, Ubisoft, and other companies, and really that is the process that we find. If you miss, especially the early steps, if you miss it, and you were talking about it already, like
mm,
one of the early steps is understanding your users, what does success look like for them, and if you don't know what that is, I imagine it's like you're driving, you're going on a road trip, and you don't know where your destination is. Like, what is it? How successful would you be in getting to a destination if you don't know your destination? Like that's
mm.
just doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing for that. Like that is the logical flow we found with that 6-step with improving onboarding
Mm.
experiences.
Okay, so we won't be spoiling the main talk. We won't talk about any of the 6 steps, but like let's maybe move on to the most common mistakes that SaaS companies make when creating their onboarding flows. So you already mentioned one, not having any clear destination, not knowing who the customer is or what their job is, what they're hiring the product for. Are there any other, mistakes that kind of jump out at you very often?
Yeah, I mean, you already mentioned it, and it's something that I see all the time. It's just slapping on a product tour, and it's just like
Mm,
let's just slap it on. And
yeah.
the problem with that is often when it's unclear what is success for users, you don't have a clear path to like what is the minimum number of things they need to know, the
Mm,
features they need to learn to get to that success. And what ends up happening for a lot of product tours, and this is the reason why the word onboarding gets a bad rep for a lot of in the design community is product owners end up becoming let's point everything out where I can imagine in real life where you come into like a store like Walmart or something and somebody grabs your hand and it starts pointing out every single thing like Emilia, there's the chicken here's the lettuce, here's the tomatoes, and I'm
yeah,
just
oh
like
God.
I'm just trying to find toilet paper, man. Like they just point to the toilet paper. It just doesn't make sense. And this is
I love
what
this
this is
analogy.
the compare. Yeah, this is what it's like when you don't have a clear idea of what success is for users. Is like you end up annoying them, like you mentioned, and it's scaring them away. So I see it too often where the product tour becomes a crutch to pointing out every single thing in the product.
I think we could co-author another book like onboarding dad jokes because there's so many of these like funny analogies you could
Right.
use. Like we talked to Nir Ayal last week, and he mentioned a scene that he actually saw on the plane. Right, there was this guy sleeping, and basically a stewardess came over to him and was like, "Excuse me, sir, do you want a drink?" And he's still sleeping, so he's not reacting, and then she like kind of keeps saying it louder and louder until like the whole plane hears, "Excuse me, sir, would you like something to drink?" And this guy suddenly wakes up and he's like
Right.
completely discombobulated, like, well. And I feel like a lot of companies do that with onboarding as well.
Mm.
They sort of, like, yeah, everybody wants a drink on the plane, but when they are thirsty, not when they are sleeping, right?
That's
So
true.
it's kind of targeting the users not where they are, but like sort of dismissing their stage in the user journey. Like, would you say this is also something that you noticed in kind of your work?
For sure. I mean, that's exactly what I see like over and over again. It's like you're going back to what the word you mentioned, and it's annoying. Like Near's trying to sleep, like literally, like they're trying. They it's like when you don't understand where the users are in the journey. Like for
Mm,
example, in the analogy, the person sleeping, that's where they are, and you're like kind of jamming them to this ideal path that you think like drinking something
yeah.
is it's gonna make them happy if they drink something. But is that where they are right now, and is that exactly what they need? In once again, this analogy, they want to sleep,
Mm,
right? And I think having a clear understanding of where users are and giving the right message right at the right time, through the right way, whether
mm.
that's by whatever tactic you use, is usually the best way when you understand where users are and where they're coming from and what they need to do next.
Yeah, well, so that kind of brings me to the million-dollar question. Let's make it Canadian dollars in case you know the answer. Well, like, how do you know? How do you know exactly like what your users need, where they are in the user journey? I feel like, whenever I crack Mixpan or Heap or whatever, Amplitude analytics tool you're using, it's just so overwhelming. And I see it over and over again that these companies, even the ones that have a lot of resources, right, they don't seem to pay that much attention to, like usage analytics. So I rarely, very rarely come across a product that will meet me where I am and really point me in the right
Mm.
direction. Why do you think that is? How can we facilitate the process where we have so much data, but the data are kind of like all over the place and we can't digest it to really see the bigger picture?
I think one of the problems is this whole concept called being data driven. And when we
Mm.
hear the word data driven, often what I hear other folks say is, let's just measure everything. Let's track every single thing.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned it, is like there's just they just it just becomes data vomit. Where like, oh, how do I make sense of this vomit here? Like you just get vomited on your face.
Oh
I think
gosh.
what is a much better path is trying to understand, going back to the customer journey, is trying to figure out exactly what steps an ideal like new user journey would look like and what they need to do, and finding out where they're getting stuck from there. And I'm trying to bring up an example right now. Let's say Calendly, where like when
Mm.
we booked this meeting, uh, there's a few things that a successful new user would need to do before they can book a meeting. They need to connect their calendar account. They need to sign up for it. They need to test it out. They need to share out their links. All of those stuff like are the key moments that you need to be tracking, instead of trying to figure out, did the user click this button? Did the user check out the API? Did they use, like, all that stuff is more advanced stuff, or something that is more uh not the main course. If it was a meal, that's like
Mm.
the side dishes. You want to understand what the main course is, and guiding them there. I think that's what I've seen, and work well. And to your point, I've only seen a handful of companies who really are data disciplined, where they're very disciplined
Mm.
about what they're measuring and ignoring everything else, because those ones are just to make you feel good about being data driven, and not really like more data led, where it's driving the decision and understanding where users are and where they're getting stuck in that path. So that's what I've seen with the companies that we're working with.
That's really cool. And kind of, yeah, that's really the key, thinking what you really need to measure, what you really need to be looking at, and then just kind of looking at these checkpoints. And of course, it's cool to sort of take a bird's eye view sometimes to see if there are any other, checkpoints that you may have missed, right? But ultimately, you need to know what you want. It's the same like with a product vision, right? You can't just like build random things that people are requesting, because then you'll just, create this monster
100%.
Frankenstein of a product, right? That doesn't really have any product vision or doesn't make any sense. Cool. This sounds all super exciting. I'm really looking forward to the talk and learning about the 6-step framework. So yeah, thank you so much, Ramli, and I will see you in October.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day. Thanks.
You too.
Bye bye.
Looking forward to it.